Morning. Morning. Sarah and Ben, thank you. Because of your attendance, we met quorum a couple minutes late today, but I'll blame that on the weather. So good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's well. Just like last month, friendly reminder to non-EDC attendees in the room or online. Comments or questions during our session is reserved for EDC members, along with any presenters or staff for today. First thing we'll do is start off with the business of approving the minutes for our April meeting. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, well, thank you. Let's let the minutes reflect the April minutes approved. Okay, so we are in the fifth meeting of the year. So far, we've had a lot of great topics, a lot of outside folks that have come in on panels and others on a genuine and thorough discussion. Today, we're going to be a little bit more internal, which is great. And I think it'll be some really worthwhile updates and discussion. Couple things, though. So a housekeeping item I wanted to go over first. The last field trip, if you will, we did was, I think it was February of 2024. We went down to Amazon HQ2, which for those of whom were there was a great experience. We held a meeting in their demo center, and then we were fortunate enough to get a tour from the HQ2 staff. We feel that it's a mutually beneficial opportunity to get the EDC commissioners out to new or significantly repositioned facilities from time to time. And the reason I'm bringing it up is originally we were going to host this May meeting at the Fuse with George Mason. Unfortunately, there were some construction-related challenges such that we will be looking to hold our meeting there at a later date, hopefully at some point this summer. I was personally fortunate enough to get a kind of a pre-substantial completion tour with Paula earlier this year. It's a fantastic facility. I think you all will agree when we get out there. Mixed use, lots of different uses and functions. So we look forward to highlighting it for all the commissioners soon. And then Ryan, before I go over to you, I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about one of our main topics for today, the rapidly evolving National Landing submarket. We're excited to hear more about the Innovation District, which Michael is going to discuss in greater detail with us. I was a history major, so I can't help myself doing some facts here and old things. We're very fortunate to live and work in a dynamic market in Arlington County, which despite shrinking due to market conditions, still totals roughly 37 million square feet of office space. National Landing comprises about 10 million square feet of that, so let's call it just over a quarter. Some context and history on the area. Following the Pentagon's completion in the 1940s, the area became a more desirable area for offices and housing. And one of the first larger tracts was sold in 1946. That was about 190 acres, which really kind of led to an expedited and new large-scale development, particularly in Pentagon City. Moving forward a few decades to the 1970s, with the delivery of the metro, I think that was in 1976, much more focus was given to high-density development, with Crystal City being part of the Route 1 corridor development focus. Over the years, this Crystal City submarket was a hub for government, particularly DoD, along with their contractors. Simply put, the market remained a hub for government until the mid-2000s, when PTO was relocated to other areas, both regionally and throughout the country. And more recently, BRAC 133, which resulted in various DoD agencies moving throughout the region and the country. Or county, excuse me. With those structural shifts, the market had to reinvent itself. And thanks to some forward-looking development and placemaking, National Landing has become a much more mixed-use live, work, play market. These stats, even though I'm in the office world, really surprise me. So there are currently over 26,000 residents, over 5,500 hotel rooms, and just less than 3 million square feet of retail, which is pretty amazing for what equates to 1/4 of the county. Despite this improvement, the office market still features highly elevated vacancy rates and has for some time. Though with new entrants to the market such as Amazon, Virginia Tech, Shield AI, and others, there's reason to be optimistic. So Ryan, with that little history lesson, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. And I'll just completely destroy the good vibes that you gave. But we're going to get back to optimism in a minute. So we're going to do something a little different today. I'm going to provide a little bit more of an in-depth overview of some economic indicators and outlooks and kind of a little bit of insight into what we're doing. We thought this would be helpful for the commission. Would really love your feedback after the meeting. Like if there's things that you felt, hey, we'd like to see that, on a regular basis, great. If there's things that are missing, please let us know. We're going to try to make the director's report a little bit slightly longer, but a little bit more detailed and less about maybe activities and more about kind of what we're seeing in our data in the market and things like that. Just for to begin, I wanted to start with some economic indicators, and I'm going to be glancing at my notes because we have a lot of materials we wanted to cover today. But the federal impacts in terms of reductions in force, regional real estate footprint, America First policies, tariffs, they're all impacting our economy as we've talked about before. And really, it just continues to create an environment of uncertainty, which, as many of you know from business, that's not an environment you want to operate in. So we're tracking a lot of qualitative data, quantitative information, and we're bringing that forward to the county board. We want to share it with you. We're talking about it internally. And so here on the screen are a couple of indicators that we've been tracking. So unemployment is certainly on the rise. We've seen over 1,000 Arlington residents file for initial unemployment claims since the beginning of the year. That's January 1st through April 19th. And that's, for context, a 75% increase over the same period last year. But what this data doesn't tell you is that we are not capturing kind of changes in the workforce that are going on. Things like people who are on admin leave, who have taken early buyouts, who are taking the early retirement options and things like that, particularly around our federal workers and federal contractors. And this doesn't also capture people who may not file for unemployment. So that number is likely elevated, and we know it's elevated in terms of people out of work. But we just wanted to kind of make sure give you some sense of kind of what we're seeing. So as of March unemployment, the unemployment rate is 3.2%, which is up 60% from last year. In terms of our tourism sector, we continue to watch this very carefully. Hotel bookings are down 3% year to date from this time last year. And the biggest drop is in federal government travel or related business travel and international travel. And March and April are typically a pretty busy season for us. And we're actually down 8% in bookings over this time last year. By all means, I should have said this at the beginning, like if some of you have, we'd love to hear kind of your thoughts after if you have specific industry knowledge or expertise. But in terms of tourism, I was talking to Emily the other day, and she said that we're kind of in regular contact with our hotel operators, and they're saying that while they think some of the big wave of cancellations has hit us, there are seeing some kind of rebookings, but we're still, as you see in the numbers, trending downward, and we're continuing to look out 30, 60 days with our data that we are able to project.
And Ryan, also, I can add to your other stats on the jobs. Many of the tech industry, people get severance. And so people who are still in their severance period or are getting severance, not filing for unemployment typically are hesitant. So they're not in those numbers.
Correct.
But yet there is a burning fuse on those, as you mentioned. So I just want to add the severance part of the equation to your list.
That's a great point. We'll add that in, particularly around on the private sector side. In terms of local spending, local tax revenues on sales and meals appear to be on track with prior years in terms of total revenues. However, we know that this doesn't account for things like inflation, and we're only capturing kind of the first 2 months of 2025. So this is not a great indicator of local business impacts because it doesn't capture those things, plus just increasing cost of doing business, which we know is on the rise. So we're monitoring that, but it is a lagging indicator that we'll start to we'll keep an eye on going forward. In terms of the real estate market, office vacancy remains up at 24%. But federal leases appear to be holding steady at this point. We haven't seen a significant impact from the recent DOGE activities. And you'll hear later from Mark that we have over 1 million square feet of existing office going through adaptive reuse. And we know another a handful of properties are showing interest in that. And so that's positive because our policies are clearly encouraging the market to do something different. In the residential market, we see that holding steady for now, but we are noticing in the data increased for sale residential properties. The number has increased of those coming on the market. Multifamily residential vacancy appears to be holding steady. So if we go to the next, one last item here. So federal contracting, we've talked a lot about this. Just as a reminder, in fiscal year 24, Arlington-based businesses saw $13 billion of federal contract spending. Since January, we've had 506 federal contracts canceled, which have a potential value of up to $5.2 billion. Some of that we know are contracts that have already been fully spent and then are just being terminated. Some of those we're hearing anecdotally from some of our businesses that they're canceled, but now they're going back to renegotiate and talk through kind of, can we do less of the so it's a bit of a moving target, but again, as you heard from our colleague Ben Garthwaite, these are real things that are happening, and that's trickling down into things like laying employees off, potentially losing office space and downsizing of companies or closure of companies. Okay, so now we'll go to the next slide. So we want to give you a little bit of a sense of kind of three kind of outlooks. The first is the Virginia economic outlook. So at the state level, the UVA's Weldon Cooper Center just put out a recent update on their outlook for the economic outlook for Virginia, and it's not looking really great. 2025 is looking as a very challenging year, with some continuation into 2026 and then an eventual recovery based on their projections. Most notably, they're definitely projecting the labor market to contract throughout the remainder of this year, with significant unemployment numbers occurring across the Commonwealth, and probably reaching its highest point since 2021. The GDP for Virginia, they're projecting, will still remain in positive territory for the year, but our growth rate will slow. And they're thinking that they're seeing that the slowdown will be kind of deeper and more persistent than previously anticipated at the beginning of the year. In terms of business sentiment, we wanted to share that the Northern Virginia Chamber and Pinkston just conducted a survey of over 300 CEOs across Northern Virginia. And generally, the outlook is pessimistic, and particularly as it looks at macroeconomics of the region. When companies are asked a little bit more about their company outlook, it's slightly more positive. But 59% of leaders expect a decline in Nova's economy over the next 6 months. Nearly 1 in 5 plan a layoff of employees, and 63% cite federal spending cuts, inflation, and tariffs as their top concerns. And then rounding out the outlook, I actually had a chance last week to spend some time in Tyson's, the VDP, Virginia Chamber, and Virginia Economic Developers Association, and every 2 years hold what we call the Virginia Consultants Forum. This is a gathering of economic development staff from Virginia, and usually about 20 top site selector consultants from across the nation. And so we gather for 2 days to share insights and build relationships, because these are the folks that are charged with working with companies to bring projects to communities. So it's a very important group for us to be in front of. And on the positive side, they were actually more optimistic about office deals in 2025 for the first time in many years. And so what they kind of seem to indicate is that they expect an increase in deal volume. However, the project metrics, kind of what's included in a project, will likely be smaller than what we anticipated kind of pre-pandemic. So smaller amounts of square footage leased, smaller head counts, but still they expect the deal volume to increase. Really, in terms of successful projects, they're continuing to be driven by high quality real estate that's available and ready. They talked a lot about companies wanting to get into spaces quickly. So that's critical to kind of moving fast. Available labor continue, and they really emphasize available high quality labor. Like we used to just say, hey, you have to have the talent, but now they're saying, hey, you have to have the high quality talent that really meets the company needs. As I mentioned, Class A, amenity rich, high quality office buildings, and then rounding out kind of the top three factors was access to airports and particularly international destinations. So on the positive side, we meet those opportunities or those factors here in Arlington, but we're still seeing continued really stiff competition from the Sun Belt. So North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Arizona, those states are really doing a lot of deals right now. They're putting a lot of focus on economic development in terms of their state policies. So our competition is stiff, and we kind of also picked up maybe a little bit from the site consultants that they don't have a great insight and perception of Northern Virginia. Not that it's negative, they just don't know a lot about us. We're not maybe rising on their radar in terms of project opportunities. So kind of tells us really putting more emphasis on building those relationships, external marketing, really getting the message out. And that's a regional, state and local effort, not just an Arlington effort. So
do you think that's due to labor costs? Kind of the higher dedication and
of why they don't look at us?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just curious, you mentioned some of the Sun Belt competitive markets. I would think the cost of labor in
not particularly. They actually said that the cost of labor seems to be normalizing across what they call like tier one, like million plus, regions, and then tier two, like which are below that. Pandemic, they specifically brought up that during the pandemic, I mean, this is two consultants that presented, so don't quote me that it's like all 20 of them agree with this statement, but that what they were seeing is that during the pandemic there was that flight to other markets for a couple of reasons, but part of it was labor costs being lower. That they're seeing that's kind of evened out.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's so now that's why they're saying it's really about the quality of the labor. So costs might have caught up, but do you actually have the labor with the education, the experience, that kind of workforce background? And on labor, one thing that we did talk about with all of them in our roundtables was that we have a really, I think, good opportunity right now in light of the reductions in the federal workforce and having more labor available to really attract projects here. And when you think about some of the folks that are being laid off or fired from the federal government, these are highly qualified, highly educated individuals with loads of experience. And so we talked as a region, and I talked with our VDP, our Virginia counterparts, like this is the opportunity to strike right now. We got to be out there generating the leads because we actually, for once, have the labor force that's available and ready to get back to work. My colleague and former boss, Stephanie Landrum, who was on the HQ2, helped bring Virginia Tech to Alexandria. She said it was kind of funny that when we did that project, we had to spend $2 billion to get the labor because we took Amazon. That was a concern of Amazon. Now we have the opposite problem. So I think we're really pushing VDP to kind of get out there and really be generating these projects right now because we have the product, we have the labor, we have the factors that can play into this. But happy to talk a little bit more. But yeah.
Quick follow up on that. In terms of the sentiment, is it more kind of initial sentiment as in the early stages of a search process about this region? Or is it more once we get down the line and they're kind of stacking different options in there, something that's a little bit more data driven in terms of where it might fall short?
I definitely got the impression from we had 8 kind of flow through our roundtable, and 6 of the 8, it was more the first thing. It was just like this was the first time they ever been to Northern Virginia. They were like, wow, this is amazing. Like, look at all this stuff. You know, like, I mean, it's not like they don't know about us, but we're just not like hitting we're not up there with the Charlottes and the Austins and the Phoenixes that are like really doing a lot of projects right now and really generating a lot of buzz and marketing and doing a lot of things on the economic development front to attract companies. I think they're just, there's kind of been this shift to the South and businesses follow businesses, and we got to kind of start winning those deals back. And I think part of that is by telling our story of like, look at everything that you have here.
Yeah. And a regional story.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, we were sitting with, it was everybody from Manassas and Loudoun all the way to the east to Alexander, Arlington. And, you know, as we were going through what's in our communities, like they didn't know that we have advanced manufacturing here. They have, you know, or office product and knowledge workers that can do those jobs. So it was just, I think there's just an awareness gap, and we just need to muscle up, I think, on that.
Is that something BDEP is going to lean into?
We hope so. They've struggled to get funding for marketing, frankly. The General Assembly has not been very generous in that sense. They have more this year, and I talked to Jason about like how do we partner with them to kind of, Jason Alcubi, the head of VDP, to say, look, we have money too. So like if you have to put some money towards something, like tell us to match it or tell us to put some skin in the game, and we all collectively can probably come up with something to do that. So you're not like looked at as like, oh, we're just helping Nova, right? I mean, we do need the help right now because we're ground zero for some of the biggest challenges in the economy of the state. But we get that they got to work the whole Commonwealth. So we said, you know, that was one idea that I put forward to them is like, make us pay, you know, half the cost of whatever you want to do.
I mean, ironically, the story is pretty amazing. Millions of square feet of available space, available, incredibly high quality labor, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
costs have changed, right? Like, like there is something to really tout.
Yeah. And we're doing that. We'll talk a little bit about that later, maybe this summer, about kind of some of the things we're doing on our marketing and promotion front. I want to be careful of time. Let me just tick through a couple of the things that we're doing just so you're aware of kind of what's going on. And how we're responding to both this, but also more importantly, how we're continuing to move forward with our strategic plan and our strategy, because that's ultimately what's really going to help drive activity. So on the business development front, we have loads of things going on this week in particular, actually. So, but before I talk about that, I'll just tell you that we're at Michael's team has had 31 project successes so far this fiscal year, leading to nearly 450,000 square feet leased or facilitated that leasing, and over 2,000 job announcements. So BIG has been working very hard on a variety of campaigns in addition to all the work on the tech ecosystem. And so very excited with that. And we're still getting looks, but we need to work with our state partners to increase the number of projects. This week is Select USA. It's a major investment summit happening over in National Harbor. This is an international development summit. We have 3 staff there. I'll be going over there later today. We're working with Virginia. We're working with Nova Economic Development Alliance. This is also tied in. We purposely tied this into the launch of our international soft landing program known as the Arlington Tech Launchpad, which starts tomorrow, and it's a 3-day immersion program where we have 13 companies from across the globe coming to Arlington to spend 3 days so we can showcase the community, help them meet important companies that are located here, and learn about what we have to offer to help with their establishment in the United States and their growth. And so we are very excited about this. We'll be able to give a report out on how this goes, but the level of energy is just really amazing. And I want to thank Adriana on Michael's team, who's been leading that effort. And you'll hear about the innovation district concept in a few minutes. We talked about tourism on the positive side. Our team has helped book over 33,000 group room nights which is this fiscal year so far surpassing our goal of 27,500. We have World Pride starting in on May 17th, which will run through June 8th, an international celebration of Pride Month being hosted here in the DMV. And so we're excited to bring lots of visitors into the region. And we've been doing a ton. Emily and her team have been doing a ton with support from the county manager's office to promote that event. And we also have our ACVS sales team out in the markets. Portia was most recently in Las Vegas, conducted 40 one-on-one meetings with operators to try to bring, more group activity to Arlington. And the team continues to do that. On small business, we hosted our transformational challenge over the first part of the year, which ended on April 30th with our biz launch, hosting the Pitch Fest finale at Amazon HQ2. So Brian, thank you for hosting us there again. This was a great event where we had our small business that went through our kind of business accelerator program to then pitch, and we had several winners announced there. And we're also continuing to do a ton of work on helping federal workers that are interested in transitioning to business. Tara's had multiple workshops going on that. Placemaking, we've announced our creative placemaking grants, and those were approved by the county board on Saturday. We had 16 applications and awarded 2 grants of $50,000 each. And this program is really to help bring together arts and placemaking and economic development. We're excited that the Langston Boulevard Alliance and the Arlington Philharmonic Association both are receiving those grants. Langston Boulevard is going to help to activate vacant retail space on the boulevard with an art gallery, and the Philharmonic will be doing performances throughout our business districts and neighborhoods. And so we're hoping, we didn't get funding, we didn't ask for funding for this again for next year, but we're hoping that once we get this program proven, we'll go back and hopefully make this part of our regular program. 2 final comments. First, policy and advocacy. On Monday, the county is hosting a briefing with our state delegation to inform them of kind of all the things we just talked about, and to ask them for the General Assembly to assist in helping to mitigate some of these federal impacts. We've been asked as AED to put together our economic development platform. This is a very broad set of ideas at this point, because these General Assembly special committees are still in their kind of discovery phase of what they want to do. We're hearing that likely later in the fall, they will come back and reconvene to potentially pass either new legislation or make money available to support communities impacted by federal reductions. Our main things focus on increased resources for VDP lead generation, support for office redevelopment in urban areas, increased funding for small business financing and R&D programs, and assisting with our tourism development and destination marketing. And those things will continue to be talked about over the course of the summer and fall. So that's kind of the latest and greatest out of AED. I'm happy to take any additional questions if we have time. We're going to hear 2 more staff presentations, short presentations after this on CMRI and Innovation District. But with that, Nick, I'll hand it back to you.
Any questions for Ryan?
I just have a couple of comments from, as a federal employee, and you all might know this already, but I'm under the DHS umbrella here at CISA. The administration has stopped work on St. Elizabeth's. So I know CISA is now not planning on, as of the moment. And then just anecdotally, just looking on LinkedIn and Reddit, a lot of people who are leaving the workforce right now, federal workforce, are doing so because, at least for DHS, they have put core hours back in place, which are very unflexible. So for, anyone looking to get some of this wonderful talent, flexibility is really attractive to certain.
Sorry, core hours. Could you explain what that means?
Yeah, so they're basically saying you must be on site from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Okay.
and be in a building for 8 solid hours.
Thank you for that update on St. Elizabeth's. I didn't know that they had stopped work on that, but that's very helpful. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ryan. That was great.
Just quick, I'm jumping off Sarah's comment. I think it's, as we target, particularly looking at the federal workforce cuts that are being made, I think it's looking at the types of employees and the types of areas that are being let go. For example, like HHS has had broad cuts or people leaving the federal workforce through the deferred resignation program, or early retirement, but there's a lot of scientists from NIH and CDC being let go. And that's an immense opportunity for companies that, do research, pharmaceutical companies to pick up talent, that was otherwise, going to be staying at those agencies. So I think working with partners and identifying where we have the workforce that's available is going to be monumentally important.
I think something you said earlier, obviously uncertainty is never a good thing for business. But being on the offensive, right? I think you said now's the time to strike. So to the extent possible, I fully support that. So that's great to hear. Thank you. You guys have been busy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna move over to a couple staff briefings. So first, Michael is gonna talk about the National Landing Innovation District, and then following that, we will get a update from Mark on CMRI. Thanks, Michael.
Good morning, everybody. If you haven't met you yet, Michael Seafider, I'm Director of the Business Investment Group. So happy to be here today to talk about what I think is our biggest and hopefully most exciting initiative, the National Landing Innovation District. Honestly, I get really excited talking about this. I think I have 10 minutes. So if I start to go a little long, somebody kind of give me a watch. So once I start talking about this, I can kind of go on a little bit. Literally, this is probably the most exciting project I've worked on in about 15 years in economic development. I think for all the reasons we kind of spoke about, as we started this project before the federal transit happened, I think it makes this an even more potentially impactful project. And really the time is aligned quite well to hopefully have this be a transformative project, not just for National Landing, but really Arlington and the surrounding areas as well. I do want to say also, I want to thank Tracy and the National Landing bid, as well as Alexandria's Economic Development Partnership. The three of us did partner on the initial scoping study in 2024. And we are continuing to partner in kind of the second phase of work, which I'll discuss towards the end of the presentation. Let's go over these. So kind of first natural question, what the heck is an innovation district? So kind of a quick consolidated definition is it's a concentrated geographic area that fosters innovation and economic growth by bringing together anchor institutions, companies, and startups. In terms of anchor institutions, that could be something like the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus. That could be DoD's Joint Innovation Lab, which is in Crystal Drive, which contains AppWorks, the Office of Strategic Capital, Defense Innovation Unit, and other assets that can be leveraged as well. In terms of size, an innovation district is typically 10 to 300 acres. We have not defined the exact geography for National Landing, but it would be on the larger side of that. Roughly, the boundaries would be from the Pentagon down to Virginia Tech's Innovation Campus on the south side, National Airport to the east, and Amazon HQ2 to the west. So obviously, that's a considerable area that crosses the two jurisdictional boundaries. An innovation district comprises three types of assets: economic, think venture capital firms, other access to funding for startup companies, as well as physical assets, prototyping labs, 3D printers, co-working spaces, things of that sort. And lastly, networking assets. Really what separates an innovation district from your typical office market is really the networking, really thinking of supporting programming in place to help startup companies, help entrepreneurs form their companies, grow from there, help potential employers get connected with companies, and really just have this place of what they like to say, serendipitous interaction between people who may not have known that each other exists, but find a way to collaborate and create a transformative project or effort. So why are we doing this National Landing, and why are we doing this now? So the point before in terms of national competition and kind of where Northern Virginia stacks up, there's an article I love to cite from the Wall Street Journal. It came out in late 2023, but the statistics are probably still relevant. The region, out of the 27 largest metro areas, the DC region placed 21st in the share of what they call frontier tech workers, which basically is kind of the next generation of skills, which are receiving the highest pay as well as the highest increase in job listings. And then in terms of momentum, so kind of looking at the recent growth as well as projected growth, DC region was 27th out of 27 regions. Behind Kansas City, my hometown Cincinnati, which I usually don't think of as being a thriving tech hub, and a variety of other places, I don't think you'd usually consider us a peer of. So that may be part of the reason why companies are looking at some of those other areas. They're not seeing, while we have a lot of tech talent, it's usually more legacy, and it's not quite on that cutting edge like you're seeing in Seattle or some of the other markets. Within the region, there's really not a tech hub destination. I think it's scattered throughout. There's a lot of pockets here and there. So we really see National Landing as kind of being a great central location with a lot of tremendous metro access to really become that hub neighborhood. Both on the federal and the private side, the investment thesis is lining up well with our strengths, particularly around the defense DoD. In the past few years, venture capital has really flowed heavily into that area, and there's really no signs of that stopping. So the timing works well, given that's a core strength of the neighborhood. We see an innovation district serving as a talent magnet. So a reason why a company may want to get involved as employees want to be in those neighborhoods where their peers are, where there's opportunities to connect with each other and to move from startups to corporates and back and forth. So various points before, I think this creates a marketable package. I think something we've maybe struggled with is what is that compelling message on a national level? At one point we had HQ2, but that announcement has been somehow almost 7 years. And obviously the pandemic kind of threw a wrench in, I think, our ability to leverage that. So this will allow us to kind of consolidate resources and have something that can be compelling on a national level. And lastly, this is a proven model. This isn't something we just thought of by ourselves. There's hundreds of these around the world. This had their first global innovation district network or conference in Monterrey, Mexico last month that one of our employees attended. And they met innovation districts from Australia, Asia, Africa, take your pick. And probably as everyone knows, National Landing, specifically kind of the Crystal Drive corridor, is a hub for defense tech companies. Obviously, Boeing's headquarters at the north end. You have major presence from other primes, Raytheon, Booz Allen, L3Harris, et cetera. And also a lot of great startups. I think Nick mentioned Shield AI. They've taken 40,000 square feet and plan to hire 300 plus employees at what's becoming their East Coast hub. They're headquartered in San Diego, but 2 of the 3 C-suite have moved to, I think, Alexandria technically, and they're really growing their presence here. So we expect to see more companies like that. I think another fun stat is, while yes, we do have a strong cluster of defense, it's not as much on the innovation side. There's an annual report put out by a Boston-based nonprofit. It's called the NatSec 100. 50 plus of the 100 are in California. About 10 are in Texas. Virginia has 2. So while we think of ourselves as being a defense hub, the next generation of companies really aren't growing here, but we're starting to see some of them. We are starting to see a bit of a cluster in Roslyn and a National Landing, and hopefully we'll have more companies on that list in the future. In terms of kind of the proven model, just quickly, 2 great examples are Kendall Square in Boston and Tech Square in Atlanta. Kendall Square is kind of the originator of an innovation district. Both markets, that we'll note, have the highest office rental rates in their metro area, which National Landing is certainly not. National Landing trails the RB corridor and certainly trails downtown DC. So room for growth there. Boston, while being similarly sized, has 4 times the venture capital deal flow as the entire DC region. And then in Atlanta, I think this has really become in the past, I guess really since the pandemic, Atlanta has risen up the rankings of kind of being a tech hub. I think they've had a lot of great press in different magazines. And Tech Square has been a driver of that. I think of note at the bottom bullet point, they have 25 corporate innovation centers in a fairly small area, I believe it's smaller than National Landing, 7 venture funds, and 5 startup accelerators. For comparison, I don't have a specific number on the corporate innovation centers in National Landing, but I think it's less than 5. We have a couple of venture funds, and we just announced our first accelerator. Well, there's been some accelerators that have closed over time, but our only active accelerator was announced last month, and we'll be having its first cohort here in June. So well behind where Tech Square is in Atlanta. In terms of what we're going to focus on in the Innovation District, we did a scoping study last year with Cambridge Innovation Center, who was one of the originators of Kendall Square in Boston. We're working with their consulting arm. The 3 areas are advanced computing, so think anything that analyzes data faster, AI, quantum computing, et cetera. Cybersecurity, the region's calling card for a long time, and then defense technology. In the bottom, text at the bottom, it kind of has the concentration compared to the national average. Advanced computing, we're 3.5 times, 4.5 times for cybersecurity, and 6.5 for defense technology. So we think these are areas where we have the room to win. We worked with the steering committee of 16 stakeholders through 2024 and early 2025. We landed on this draft vision statement, which will be reformulated once there's a board of directors in place for the organization that leads this. I'll just leave it up there if you all want to take a couple seconds to read it. In terms of economic impacts, these are certainly projections. These were also done before what's all happened this year. And I think we all know with economic projections, they're as good as the paper. They're I guess worth as much as the paper they're written on, or whatever the phrase is. There's going to be a lot of factors that determine whether or not these come true on the lower end or the higher end. But looking at the potential impact, we utilized a low square footage per employee at 225 square feet per employee to get these numbers. So at its baseline today, there's almost 40,000 jobs in National Landing, which encompasses, again, Alexandria and Arlington sides. Within 10 years, this includes the HQ2 projections, we're looking at about 64,000 jobs without any intervention. If things go well, on the high end, we're looking at adding about 11,000 additional jobs in the neighborhood. These are based on peer innovation districts and kind of the first 10 years of their operation. Again, some of this happened, right before the pandemic or right after, so there's a lot of variation in these numbers. But even on the low end, you're looking at another, 3,500 jobs that would not have been in the neighborhood otherwise, which is significant. On the office demand front, today there's about 11.8 million square feet of occupied space. If nothing were to happen, we're projecting 14.5 million would be occupied. Again, that does include HQ2, which is a significant portion of that. On the low end, it would be another 0.8 million square feet of office space. On the high end, another 2.4 million square feet of space, which for context is a little bit bigger than the first phase of HQ2. So in terms of the moving the innovation district forward, we do not expect this to be run by AED, the National Landing Bid, or Alexandria's office. We are working together to found an independent 501c3 nonprofit that would exclusively focus on the National Landing Innovation District. This is best practice from innovation districts around the country and the globe. The organization, by being independently focused on this, it could really be a convener of stakeholders from businesses, academia, startups, government, and anyone else who really wanted to be a part of this. It would have its own independent board of directors and a variety of committees that would work under that. We really see the organization once staffed up, really building an ecosystem through consistent programming. In these districts, there's usually almost daily activities from really simple meetups to more complex hackathons or whatever else it might be. Our team is doing a decent amount of programming through the Arlington Innovation Fund, but we neither have the money nor the staff to do that on a daily basis. And then some other advantages are dedicated staff, preferably with innovation experience. I think we would see staff that has worked in startups or knows how to commercialize technology. Another important advantage is the ability to leverage private funding as the county government. It's either we could do that in a small form or would struggle to do that. This organization would be funded primarily from outside parties, which would give it a lot more monetary weight to pull off these feats. And then also just the flexibility and speed to implement. Obviously, county government sometimes can be a little bureaucratic. This organization would have a lot more flexibility to move at the pace of innovation. So they weren't all supposed to be checked, but they ended up getting checked. Our keys to success, a few of these are missing, I think. One I'm going to highlight, though, is the early projects. There are a few projects that have occurred in the past year that are starting to establish momentum, even without this being formed. Obviously, the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus, I won't belabor this. I think we're all familiar with this project. This is the accelerator I mentioned before, Starburst. They're a global aerospace and defense accelerator. We work to recruit them in collaboration with Virginia Innovation Partnership Corporation, JBG Smith, and the National Landing Bid. We announced the project in March, and they'll be opening a hub on Crystal Drive. They'll be doing two accelerator cohorts per year with 10 to 12 companies. They just closed the first application round last Friday. I got around 60 applicants, and they'll be working over the next 2 weeks to select the 10 to 12 companies. They'll be here in June for a 10 to 12 week cohort. There will be opportunities to engage with the different players from the DoD, our corporate community, and hopefully we'll see these companies. Some are going to be from Virginia, others from around the country. Hopefully we'll see some of them decide to relocate or move here and expand. Similar vein, JBG Smith announced in the fall that they're partnering with something called the Virtus Innovation Center. This will also be an accelerator incubator as well as an investment fund. They're projecting to have a 40,000 square foot hub with shared offices, labs, prototyping space. And this will really be at the intersection of energy and defense. So it's been a big growing area for investment as well. And they partnered with Energy Innovation Capital out of Boston, who has a lot of experience in the energy sector, as well as national security. And beyond those, I think one of the things that's been exciting for, I think, our team is even without forming this district, just kind of talking about it with corporates and startups and venture capital firms has gotten us a lot more access than we've ever had. Ryan and I met with a big corporation who will be significantly expanding their presence in national lending. Conversation started with what kind of incentives are on the table. It ended up being that company will most likely be a foundational partner and paying into the innovation district without us putting any incentives. I think it's had that kind of sway with companies, and it really helped drive kind of a reason for why they want to have a bigger presence in national lending. Same thing, we talked with one of Europe's largest defense tech startups. Had a quick meeting, talked about the district, and they'll be opening a hub in national lending as well. Starting out with a few thousand square feet, but as they open in the United States, they have significant plans to grow, maybe 100, 200 employees as well. So again, just kind of the idea of this is intriguing to people, and hopefully we actually have something there. It'll be even better. So what are we doing? Right now, we're starting our second phase of work, which began in April. We're working on a couple things. One is the organizational business plan, what the organization will do, not do, how it will collaborate with our team, the BID, NV, Northern Virginia Tech Council, and others. And then really working to shape the, actually forming the organization itself. So we will be recruiting a board of directors, foundational partners, funders, and then actually creating the new entity sometime likely in Q3. And then coinciding with that would be a public launch of this, again, probably Q3 or Q4, depending on how things go. With that, I think that's it. So happy to answer any questions.
I love this also, but I'm thinking back to your presentation, Ryan, with respect to some of the conversation around lots of talent kind of leaving government and a lot of the government contractor organizations. But in addition to the talent, there's a lot of intelligence. Those folks have a lot of insight into challenges and problems that are across the federal government, but also that are impacting like various industries as well. And if there's a way to like partner those folks who are highly security-based, which is why they went into the government, with some innovators in the whole tech space to kind of cull some of that information out of them, that could be a great opportunity for kind of just boosting kind of the whole startup firm market as well.
No, that's wonderful. I don't know, Michael, you have any comments on things you've been doing in that?
Another idea on that too is I think like there's an organization called FedTech. They're based in Boston, and they take people who have not necessarily run a business before, maybe people like you're talking about that have those skill sets, and kind of they form a team based on, I think they work with they recruit a technology and then kind of build a team. So I wonder if there's anything there too of kind of taking all that talent that has gone from federal government, but maybe would want to be in a startup or something. I don't know, those some thoughts.
But none of those types of ideas are exactly what we want to hand off to this type of district because we have limited capacity to do that for us, with our own budget and time and constraints and staff expertise. So like having some kind of hub where we can take a great idea like that and say, cool, let's get it over to the innovation district. Let's let them think about it, scope it out, and then build something about it because they'll have the resources to do that. That's kind of a key component of these districts is just those connections and building and getting people in the same room. It's hard to we always get asked what's the ROI of that? And it's like, we can measure it, but it is also just something that you see in every other successful district happening, right? So it's like, we should probably replicate what other people are having success doing, but it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. It's been on my radar to reach out to you and or Tracy for an update on this. I know this has been in the works for a long time, so this was really helpful. More of a comment and then a question. So I'm on Go Virginia's Region 7 Council, and actually been one of the projects. I'm sorry. No, listen to what I'm about to tell you, right? We gotta look at our bubble outside Arlington sometimes. It's usually I'm the one who's here in that one. So we just approved, and actually I have a call tomorrow for the state. I've been one of the project reviewers for the Innovation District in Prince William and Manassas, which is really moved far along. And I think it's during my time on the council, it's the most impactful thing I've seen move forward. Again, they've got lab space, they've got university partners. They are up for $2.4 million in Go Virginia funding that's been approved by Region 7 that the state does still need to approve. And we have our call for that actually tomorrow. So it's been a question of mine consistently of making sure that they are connecting with people in National Landing, but I think that could be a good, again, it's a different area, obviously. They have much more land. They have, again, more existing labs with Micron, with that, can't remember what they call that campus there in Manassas for George Mason, but it's huge. We've toured it. It's incredible. But that could be a nice complement to efforts here as well, but making sure that as we talk about one region, I would urge a little caution about being like the innovation districts, because I think that could be a little bit of confusing branding, because I think they might be slightly further along in the process with what has been established there already. They, as part of that, securing the 2.4, they've had to get the match for it as well, which they've overperformed in. So I asked Amy and she said she'd talked with you, but I don't know how really ingratiated the groups have been, but I would encourage that kind of collaboration as well on a regional level. And with that, again, kind of a question, and again, I'll chat with y'all offline too, some more to make sure I'm really up to speed on this as well. But it sounds to me like you have the funding in place to be able to launch summer, fall. Is that the case? And if not, where do we anticipate that funding coming from? And like what scope of funding do we need for this to come into reality?
Yeah, on Go Virginia, happy to talk with you offline. We had conversation with them. We can talk offline.
Yeah.
In terms of funding, the county board did allocate funding for AED, I think $750K for initiatives. So part of that will be put towards continuing this on our end. But beyond that, no, that's kind of our next phase of work. In the next month or so, I think I have meetings with a dozen corporates or other folks who have kind of indicated they might want to be a foundational partner. So kind of our goal next month or two is to start hopefully securing those.
Is there, just to understand the scope, because I know this has been something, again, the bid has been working on for so long, like, is there an amount, like, for this to come to reality, we would need $1 million, we would need?
Yes, that was part of the business plan that we just got at the draft the other day. We got this number for bid. We're probably looking at for the first year of operation around 1.2.
Okay.
And I think about 2 million for the kind of following years. The idea is the first year, you're hiring an executive director maybe halfway through the year, maybe an executive assistant, and then kind of building up staff in the subsequent years. So a little over $1 million is kind of the goal for the first year.
Awesome. Thank you. Congratulations. I'm really excited to figure out how we can support this as well.
Thank you.
Not with millions of dollars, but with our human capital.
Name of the Kate-based innovation district.
Thank you, Michael. I just had one question. So you cited, I think it's the NatSec magazine or
It's
publication.
Silicon Valley Defense Group. They're based in Boston. They're a nonprofit that works in the defense industry, and it's called their NatSec 100 report.
Okay, so 100, it's like emerging defense tech, right? So you said 50 are in California, 10 are in Texas. Did you say 2 are in Virginia or 2 are in Arlington?
2 are in Virginia.
2 are in Virginia. And when you say that, is it their headquarters or they physically have like?
It's headquarters. So there's like Shield AI is not headquartered here, but they do have a presence by headquarters.
So it's not as bad as it may seem, right? I mean, a lot of them, I mean, clearly there's room for improvement.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if you were to ask people, I think in the region, that you would say, you probably guess how many are in Virginia. You would think, I think a lot more than 2 based on everything that goes on here.
That would be a great list to see. I don't want to, burden people, but I mean, that's an opportunity not just for down here, but obviously the whole region and county.
Yeah, we've done to our lead generation efforts. We've contacted all the companies that aren't here. One may open an office. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good morning. Very exciting. That was very exciting. This is not going to be that exciting. So I'm here with Jill Hunger, co-lead of the CMRI effort, as you know. We're here to give a brief update and answer some questions on as we head into FY26, where we are with CMRI. So we won't spend a lot of time on this, but want to make sure that everyone understands urgency is still the top of mind for us, for the county. As we go through various cycles, the county will talk about certain things. It may seem like we're not talking about this as much. We are very much focused on urgency. And we know the headwinds have gotten worse. This isn't new information. And so things like devaluation and uncertainty are still the things that we see as the greatest commercial risks. The negative impacts are still being felt, even if we see some successes. We need to build on that. And action today weakens our future resiliency recovery. So those things are continued messages we're trying to send to continue this work program where when we obviously, many of you aware, all of you aware of the work we've done up to this point. We are now well into admin regs for adaptive reuse and site plan review. For those of you familiar with this process, this is a very unique process we're doing. We are essentially turning it upside down and going top down on regulations. That has made people uncomfortable. This summer, we'll have a couple of success stories we'll talk about. Very excited about that. And we'll continue to work on that throughout the year. And then Jill will talk about signs in a second. And then we have a number of other issues like placemaking. We'll talk in a second about the major and minor admin. And then I'll spend a real quick TF discussion on redevelopment scoping and as our next big initiative. So adaptive reuse, just so you're aware, we have 3 projects in the system and in the process right now. 2100, 2200 Crystal Drive, 2 buildings, 506,000 square feet roughly, conversion of office into a residential and hotel concept, 2 different buildings. 3601 Wilson, vacant building down in Virginia Square, and 4100, the Boston Beer Hall building up in Boston. All those are classic conversions. These 2 will be residential, fully residential, as I said. So as Ryan mentioned, roughly just under 1 million square feet taken off the market. We do have a couple of projects that we are also tracking in the conceptual phase and talking. So we think we have 2 or 3 that are going to be maybe coming forward this year. So we may have even exceed our expectations of the 3 to 4 that we thought we were going to get in the first year, which would be great. And so as we walk into the summer, we'll be providing a lot of analysis on sort of what this number means in terms of the fiscal to the board. But very good news. Once again, going through a process is different. So we're definitely sort of preaching urgency, but patience. Let's all work together to get this through. We're going to get there this summer, later this year. We're going to start seeing some projects, and we're all happy. We'll all be thrilled with that. So with that said, I'll drop it up to Jill for a second, talk about signs, and then we'll wrap up.
Certainly. So on the slide is just our proposed schedule. The board adopted an initiating resolution at its meeting on May 10th, and we're moving forward. We had the opportunity to share some of this information with the chamber last week, but really highlighting that we have strategic amendments going forward to selected sign regulations, primarily in Arlington's commercial districts. So we're really considering the impacts and benefits to the broader public, but also to the county's economic well-being. And in doing all of this, we want to closely align with the goals and objectives of the CMRI. So the contemplated changes under consideration include additional flexibility and other edits, and there's more detail around it. So it's greater flexibility for signs placed above a height of 40 feet with regard to size, the number, and placement, including allowance of some additional signs on buildings that are less than 70 feet in height. Allowing for signs located below the 2nd story, but that might be above 40 feet to be calculated without having to use the sign above 40 feet. Allowance for some freestanding signs. These are signs that could be on retaining walls or landscape planters or screening walls for the properties governed under site plans. And then broader regulations for the construction and sale leasing temporary sign types that would account for the construction that can impact the building access. And I think probably most importantly, removing the permit requirement for those temporary type signs. Mark mentioned sort of this part 2, and that's going to be some additional focus on signs within the public realm. This is requiring us to do a little bit of additional analysis and research. It's happening concurrent with all of this work, but we just know there's going to be a delay. So we're hoping for FY25, FY26 to bring part 2 forward. So again, back to this first slide, we're hoping to bring forward part 1 in July to the county board. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, and some of these are, we shouldn't dismiss, the idea of a no permit construction, like that's, I know from the work in the industry, like a bane of your existence, right? The idea like, we just need to put this stuff up nimbly and have to go through a process. That will just save a lot of people just the brain damage, right? It would just be easier to do business here. So we want to end with the last, and this has been a topic of discussion. So what's big for FY26 for us? Well, all the things we mentioned, and we'll continue to work on things like uses and such. But what we're really going to be working on is across departments, but led with AD and CPHD, sort of forming this team of really studying the redevelopment process in Arlington. And so the policy really tees this up. We passed last year that said we want to look at not only adaptive reuse and other things, but really look at overall community benefits, how we're doing it. And I think, for lack of a better term, the sort of idea that we're thinking about is as we've shifted through generations of development in Arlington, density has always been a way that we've sort of processed community benefits and sort of taking a deep look at how that model has changed and how the new model may work and how we think about de-risking real estate as a way of community benefit and getting community benefits in. So I think there's a lot of juice. I think there's a lot of stuff there. This will be a very significant community conversation. It'll also be one set of situations. This is not going to be something I'm going to come back and sort of say, and then in November, we're doing this, in December, we're doing this. This is going to be a lot of work and a lot of pieces that are pulled off of that to do discrete changes, but a lot of big questions. And I think we're time for the big questions, right? And the big answers. So I think that's really going to be the EDC and us working together as well with other departments really focusing on this. So with that said, the process hasn't stopped. So the policy changed. Matt can speak to it if he wants, but we got 3033 Wilson. Matt did, and his team, car, got it passed on Saturday. That change of that process was directly related to the policy and to planning, and all kudos to planning, adopting that idea and negotiating a deal that actually worked for that project that would not have worked under the old rules. And that's an example of where we don't need to make a big public board hearing about changing a rule. That's just more of the culture changing over time, and we're excited about that as well, because then it's gonna happen much more. Matt?
And I'll note that in the staff report for that project, planning actually included quotes from CMRI, and they, in every public presentation, highlighted that this sort of project is a public priority, which is a quote from the transformation of office policy. And I will say that staff was very creative and flexible in how to apply the zoning regulations for that project. Clarendon is particularly difficult to work in, but they were flexible. And then, community benefits, they took a different approach than what's typical. And there were only 2 public speakers at the hearing, and the Civic Association didn't even come. So I think people were happy with the process and it ended in a good place. And that's certainly to staff's credit.
Yeah, and another example of what, that's probably not the perfect process for us, but if we had waited for the perfect process, we would have still been talking about that and getting through the process as well as we can and sort of continue to relook as sort of what this study I think will look at. 3033 was great, but how can we do that better next time? So, and other projects like it. So with that said, I will leave it open to questions and comments.
Could you go back to the, a couple more? I think it was like the overall, yeah, there you go. Okay. So what would, I'm just curious, what would signs phase 2 be?
Sure. So again, these are signs more within the public realm. So if you think of sort of like wayfinding type signs, I think what we're sort of grappling with, quite truthfully, is like opening up the can, let's say, of commercial speech in a public realm. So it's a sort of a big policy shift. So we really want to sort of deeply dive into that and have consideration around it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Quick question. Mark, you had mentioned, I think you used the term de-risking real estate relative to community benefits looking into 2026.
Yeah.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have any like suggestions or ideas that are being floated around?
Yeah, I said it and I intentionally put myself on the spot, so I won't too much. No, I think the answer is just simple, is that I think we look at sort of how the process goes through. I think the money that the transactions that occur during a negotiation of get to entitlement involve a lot of transfers of value throughout that. And I think we probably need a fresh look at when those transfer values happen and when they're most advantageous to both parties. Meaning that, are we charging ourselves the cost of developer carrying capital because they have to spend at X and don't get the revenue for Y? And if those are things we can fix and sort of say, let's devalue that risk of that money hanging around and not doing anything. And then I think there's just generally the process, right? We say we can get site plans in from 5 months instead of 12 months. I think that allows capital to de-risk that, less holding, less, you maybe go out there and be able to access capital easier because you can sort of prove the concept. So I think we don't talk about that enough, but we don't talk about like, what's the difference between 50 basis points on a construction loan? And if the developer gave half of that in community benefits, would that be a better model? So that type of thing. Very high level thinking right now, but I think that's the general process.
Any more details on the major minor
Yeah.
study in terms of timeline and what that will look like?
Bill, do you want to? All right, I think.
No, sure. So I think everybody's aware we've been really working a lot on sort of our records management. If anybody has tried to research or do anything, it's a challenge. So we're moving everything into, I don't know, last century. But we're working on that. There's been a lot of work around the administrative change application. So I think we wanted to start with a really good foundation and ensure that as projects move forward with administrative change requests, they had a good chance of moving forward quickly. What we were finding is a lot of projects, they would be submitted and then returned. And there was a lot of iteration from when the time it was submitted to ultimately approved. So really being, sort of thinking about how the application was laid out and the information that we were requesting, and setting it up so that the administrative application or change application process would be like one iteration, maybe two, rather than 5 or 6. Working on the landscape and facade plans, really looking at the process, and then the condition alignment with the retail policy, as we're looking forward. So I think in 26, so trying to get sort of our house in order, and then in 26, really diving into the thresholds with the major amendments and minor amendments. And I will sort of pause right there and say, some of the things, especially with the adaptive reuse and some of the policy work, has kind of maybe helped alleviate some of those concerns with those thresholds, especially, instead of going through the major amendment, we have a new process for the conversions. Previously, that wasn't there. So I think we're sort of grabbing some of these things as we can.
And I also think there's some changes that good work have been done, like conditions with retail policy. We talked probably 2 years ago about looking at an omnibus amendment. We studied it, it would have taken so much staff time that it would not work for benefit of degrees versus another option of just, let's continue to keep a easier process for someone that comes in and wants to apply the retail plan to its old condition, that we have an easier process. It's administrative, it's whatever it is, it's quick front board process. Because I think we don't also want to do things that are like, well, that's a perfect fix, but that's going to take all our time for a year and a half. And is that the book? No, that's probably not the best use of our time. So we're making those decisions on an ongoing basis. The questions?
I have a question and a comment. So focusing on the adaptive reuse, the list, that's great. So it's almost 1 million square feet.
Yeah.
What, 6 months in? I'm sure there's going to be a lot more. For major minor projects, there's generally, I might be misspeaking here, but isn't there a website that generally would allow the citizens or anybody to track the progress of those respective projects? And is there a plan or thought given to doing that for these adaptive reuse?
We will have a project page on CPHD as we do for adaptive reuse, even though it's a different process. So right. We've often asked those questions of how much do we track admin versus minor? That's at the board level. But I think for adaptive reuse, yes, there'll be a project page and there'll be a page explaining the adaptive reuse process and then the projects that are going through the site plan process.
So similar to what you see for the project pages for the major amendment.
Yeah, the big thing is that there's not going to be SBR 1, SBRC 2, SBRC 3, all that list of engagement is going to be essentially a developer presentation and an online portal and then a public hearing for planning commission and the board. So I think we're going to have to continue that message of that was the intent, to make this more streamlined and not have those things, but people are going to have to adjust to maybe not getting as fulsome a picture of a project for a year before they get to sort of testify on it.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mark and Jill. Appreciate it. Okay, just a couple more things and maybe we'll wrap up a little bit early. So Matt, you're up on a couple things here.
All right, so the first one is the county is updating its comprehensive plan this year. The introductory chapter to its comprehensive plan, and just for your benefit, the comprehensive plan has 12 elements. It kind of guides all policy in Arlington County. When you think of any sector plan, that's part of the comprehensive plan, the master transportation plan. Anything policy related really is within the comprehensive plan. And as part of Arlington's 2050 initiative from last year, they want to revise the introductory chapter, because I guess that hasn't been revised since 1962, apparently, 1960. And they want to have that reflect the county's current policies and visions and goals. They're beginning an outreach process, and they ask each commission to have someone be representative on that process. I'm the EDC's representative. First meeting is May 27th, I believe. They're going to be meeting through the fall and then adopting the introductory chapter in winter of next year and hopefully adopting early next year. So I don't have any more details than that because we haven't met yet, but it's something to stay tuned on.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, appreciate it. Do you have any, we'll stick with you if you have anything on the commercial vacancy working group?
No, I think we were seeing what Mark and Jill came up for the work plan this year, and I know Nick sent an email to the group. The county came up with an interpretation of its FOIA meeting policy, basically saying that we can't have all virtual meetings all the time, which means we couldn't have our regular cadence of once a month. I think the intent is we will meet as needed in response to certain discrete policies and programs for the county. But that's where we landed.
Yeah, thank you. And just to add on a little bit to that. So, the commercial vacancy working group has been going on for a couple of years now. It's a combination of commissioners and non-commissioners. So, had done a lot of work, I'd say probably from summer of 23 into last fall, with the adaptive reuse being one of the main focuses. But now with this updated policy, folks only have so much time. So to require another in-person meeting, every month, particularly if there aren't major things going on, didn't seem like a very reasonable or fair ask for everybody. So generally what we're doing is we're kind of going dormant, if you will. It doesn't mean it's not going to exist. It absolutely will continue. As Matt said, with getting this update today, I'm sure, not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if later this summer into the fall, the group would reconvene. But as opposed to just having it ongoing, there might be more of like a specific task at that point of time. So it might say, hey, there's a goal that we're working on. Here's the end date. And it's our intent to spend the next 2 to 3 months focusing on whatever that topic or topics could be. So any questions related to that, feel free to ask me or Matt or Kevin or others, and we can address. Okay. All right. Any new business to bring up for today? Or old business? Okay, we're 15 minutes early. So appreciate your time. Good job. That's right.
Absolutely.